Hello everyone, I hope all is well. Welcome in for another video. So I got a question and a comment from a subscriber, Brian, who says the following. Todd, I really appreciate all your videos. Out of everyone who produces traditional wet shaving videos or content, I like yours the best, so thank you. No, thank you, Brian. There's some other ones out there that are great as well. In fact, I can suggest several. In fact, I'll message you back and point you to some other ones you might want to check out. But I do appreciate the comment and glad you enjoy the content. He says, a question I have for you as a new wet shaver. When you were first getting started, did you have any idea which direction you wanted your shave den to go, or did the den just kind of evolve? I ask this because I think I like a certain lather bowl and so on, only to find out I prefer another item or what have you. I'm kind of at a disadvantage because my wife and I have full-time RV, and so my den is basically a drawer. I'm curious of your thoughts on this. Really appreciate what you do and provide. Thanks, Brian. Well, thanks again, Brian. I appreciate your very kind comments and would love to address your question. Made some notes here to look over as I talk about this. So, the first thing I would, say that we're talking about here is shaving den. How much is too much? Like, when does the den get out of control? When is it need to be reined in? Do you need to plan how big it's going to be? And obviously you have a space issue, and so it's really, really important to you. When I first got my brother into wet shaving, one of the things that he asked me very early on, after I think about the second round of samples that I sent to him, is he said, okay, well, how do you store all this stuff? And one solution I found for him was these stackable plastic ammo boxes, and I'll roll in a picture here and put some links in the description. And that worked really well for him because they were cheap, they were stackable, and so they took up very little space. Sort of a philosophy I think you could think about with your den is thinking about having an active den and then a storage den. So a storage den would be those things you are not actively using right now, but you might want to access in the future. And then you have those that you're actively sort of in your current rotation, right? You can organize that by season. So just like you might organize your clothes for, fall and winter, and you put those clothes up and get out the summer and spring clothes and vice versa. That's how I tend to approach my shaving soaps and splashes, and then my fragrances, men's colognes, is I put up what's out of season and keep out what's in season, with a few exceptions of things that I always want to have access to that are sort of year-round scents that I enjoy. You can also, think about organizing it rather than by season, by, say, category. So let's say that you like barbershop scents, and you also like deep resinous scents, or scents that are like tobacco or boozy scents. Or let's say you like a floral scent or a lavender scent. In other words, you might have certain categories of scents you tend to like, and you might want to have one of each of those categories in your current active rotation and put everything else away, and then you can plug in the ones that you are not currently using. Like, you can replace one lavender soap with another one. Now, if you don't have another location where you can storage, if you don't have a storage locker somewhere, storage building, or you have a home that's your home base, then finding somewhere to store that's out of the way and not maybe as accessible, maybe a bit more challenging than if you had a larger place, to place all that. But there's other ways that you could address that about not having space. And so we'll talk about that as we look through that. Now, one thing I would definitely suggest is try to avoid doing blind buys, meaning blind buys actually means ones that you have not sniffed, right? Ones you haven't smelled. So if it's a soap that you haven't smelled, you don't know if you appreciate the scent, and if you haven't, used it to appreciate its performance, then maybe it's not a good idea to buy an entire puck, even though people may think that soap is the greatest thing in the world. So a good example is something like tobacco. Tobacco is a rather polarizing scent. There are people who love it and there are people who hate it, and very rarely are there people who are neutral about it. And what's interesting is that for a lot of people, this is true for me, your taste can evolve. So there may be a soap that you initially didn't like, but it grows on you, and then you come to love it. That was the case for me with tobacco. The performance was great, but I could not stand the smell. Now I can't imagine that I'd never that I ever didn't like the smell, which is kind of weird. There's another soap that's Katie's Bubbles Waterlyptus, which is watermelon and eucalyptus with a little peppermint thrown in there. And when I first used it, I liked it. It was nice, but I thought this is okay, but nothing spectacular. Now I absolutely love that soap and can't imagine ever not having it in my den. So one way to avoid getting, a den that's out of control is to stick to samples until you find ones that you truly enjoy, right? And, you can only use so many shaving soaps in a given period of time. So for example, let's say I shave an average of every 3 days, which tends to be true for me. I can't shave every day because it tends to aggravate my skin a little bit too much. I could do every 2 days and be fine. But let's say on average, which is true, I do about every 3 days. So 30 days in a month, right? Well, technically, if I had 10 soaps, I could use those soaps, each soap only once in a month, right? Before I repeated soap. So even having just 10 soaps, if you only shave every 3 days, gives you a lot of variety just within the month, right? So, part of what you might want to say is you want to limit your den size ahead of time, and that you have, let's say, a top 10. And if you remember my video, the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 challenge, where, I said, if I could only keep 5 soaps, what would I keep? And you've probably seen my top 10 spring and summer list and my top 10 fall and winter list. Then, that's sort of that idea, is like, what would you keep? And, one of the things you could think of is just get those samples and don't buy full pucks until you find one you really, really enjoy, and avoid those blind buys. Consider making some of your soaps more portable by like taking a big tub and splitting it into smaller sizes and storing away the big tubs and having a lot smaller size containers. I'll put a link to some containers that are out there on Amazon and the ones that Sterling has. I talked about that a little bit in the video with the 12 Shaves of Christmas. I think it was Shave 11 when I showed the little sample size of Sterling and the little bitty tin container and the little small shave kit that I had in there that was really, really small with a small brush. Another thing you could think about doing is doing a PIF, which means paying it forward. In other words, let's say you're halfway through a soap and you want to give the rest of it away because you've decided, I don't like that as well. Or you go ahead at the start and split a tub in two and give it to someone else that you want to try to get into wet shaving. You could also consider selling one you already have, like getting rid of it. Like right now I have posted over at the Shaving Cadre, I have a den cleaning sale going on where I've gone through my den, pulled out everything I don't use that often and things that I would not be heartbroken to part with. And I've put them up for sale, right, to liquidate that, which would give me money for other things like vacations and maybe more shaving supplies, who knows, right? But cleaning out the den. You could also consider trading with other people, like trading out soaps and doing that on Facebook groups or forums. One thing you could really try to do is sort of have this idea of nothing comes into your den until something goes out. And that's kind of the next to last bullet on the screen right now. Consider only buying a new tub when one is used up. So a 1 for 1. So in other words, no new tub comes into your den until you've used up one that's leaving, or you've sold it, or you've traded it, or you've piffed it and paid it forward, meaning given it to somebody. But ultimately, you need to decide, this first bullet up here, decide what you want from wet shaving. And ultimately, we want to enjoy the products we're using. And, the only way to really enjoy them is that they're giving you a good shave. They don't have to be giving you a perfect shave, but a shave that's not irritating, that you actually get through and enjoy, and it feels good. And for me, it's something that relaxes me and I feel refreshed, whatever it is you're trying to get out of wet shaving, and then let your den align with what the purpose is of wet shaving for you. Consider splitting those full tubs with other shavers. So if you make some friends on the forums or Facebook groups and, you start talking, here's a soap I'm interested in. Is anybody else interested? Let's go in 4 ways. And so somebody orders the soap and they cut it into fourths, right? And they keep a fourth and they send it on to the other 3 people, right? And you split the cost of the tub. That's one way, to sort of share it. And as I mentioned, joining the shaving forums and the Facebook groups. If your den gets so big that it starts to be a hassle, it starts to be a buzzkill, you're losing your joy, it's time to make it smaller. If it's too big to to handle. And mine recently got too big to handle with all the samples I have. But there, in one of the shaving groups I belong to, there's a sample box coming around, and you can go into the sample box and try different things that you like. But what I'm doing is I have a ton of samples that I'm going to be putting in there, samples that I don't need anymore, or samples that I've used half of, right? And there's ways to do that in a sanitary way where, you're trying to keep the samples as sanitary as possible. One reason that I think your question is really, really important is because something that's acknowledged in the shaving community. It's one of those things that people joke about, but at the same time are serious about. And that's what many people have called SAD, which I think most people use to stand for soap acquisition disorder or splash acquisition disorder. But basically this idea that you're always acquiring more and more shaving soaps or more shaving equipment. And, honestly, you have to set a limit on what you're going to use, and the things that are within your budget or within the space you have. There's limited space or limited money or whatever. And again, you can liquidate some of what you have in order to make room for new. But a lot of people talk about going on sabbaticals, meaning that, for the next 6 months, I'm not buying any new shaving stuff, or next year, I'm not buying any shaving stuff. And then you see a lot of people doing den cleanings, going through their den, cleaning out stuff and selling stuff off. So this problem with allowing your den to sort of organically grow can be a problem. It can be a problem just from a space standpoint, a financial standpoint, and dare I say, even a mental health standpoint, right? Where you become obsessed with this. And so it's your hobby, it's fun, but you don't want it to take over and kill your joy, right? You want it to keep it in check, and it still be something you're not ashamed of, that you're proud of, and that you enjoy and you can share with others. I'm going to take you on a tour of my shave den and show you sort of how I've organized things, keeping in mind this is certainly not going to fit with your example of an RV, Brian, but you may get some ideas by what I show you in the tour. So let's go look at the shave den, and we'll come back and finish up this talk. You can tell from my shave videos, this is a pretty cramped bathroom, and this is the closet in the bathroom here that you see behind me when I'm recording my shaves. And this is where my primary storage is for what I would call my active den. So this is a shelving unit that you can purchase on Amazon. It's like $31.50 for the 18-inch model. And right now, the 18-inch model is cheaper than the 12-inch model. And I actually think I bought the 12-inch model. Yeah, looking at it now, I know I did. It's a little more narrow. I think the 18-inch one might have been too wide for my bathroom door, if I recall. But basically really easy to put together, and it's the perfect depth, if you'll notice, for shaving soaps. And so we'll just kind of go through here. I won't go through each of the soaps, but this is basically my fall-winter soaps with a few year-round soaps thrown in as well. So these first 4 shelves here are soaps. So this would be my active den. So I have soaps here. Here's a couple of tubes of cream there, Cremo creams, another shelf, and then a shelf of soaps and a few samples in a styptic gel. Then I get into some of my splashes and a few more splashes, and then some balms there as well. So there's actually just one splash, and the rest are balms. And then some additional splashes down here, and then some witch hazels and a few balms and a alum. And this is usually where it's actually on the corner right now, where my skin tin would sit in here as well. So that's my active den, meaning the things I'm using currently. And for me, it would be around seasons, fall, spring, that kind of thing. Now, in my closet, I also have a couple of shelves, acrylic shelves over here. I'll put a link to those on Amazon as well, where I keep like my beard oils and balms. And I put a lot of my pre-shaves and some of my witch hazels down on this shelf. And so that's inside the wall of my closet there. And just have towels and the normal stuff, bathroom cleaner stuff, and a few drawers here. I don't think there's any shaving stuff in there. I do have behind this loaner razor I currently have a drawer here in the bottom, one of these little plastic things where I keep all of my loose razor blades. So the variety, the single pack razor blades, 5-pack, 10 packs. But my big packs, the platinum, I had just hanging up here on a nail in the den. So down here I have what would be sort of my out of season storage, right? So this is just a plastic, container. I think my wife got it for me at Walmart. But in the top here, I actually have, this is a big bag of samples that I'm about to send off. But below this big bag are just loose samples of things that I'm still trying, and samples I still have. This would be my drawer of soaps and creams that are sort of out of season, things that I will tend to use in the spring and summer. And so I would swap out this drawer with what's in the active shelf later on in the season, and then meaning when it gets to be warmer. And then the bottom would be my splashes and fragrances that are for more spring, summer. And so they would replace. So that's one way I sort of control it, is have a sort of a fall, winter, or spring, summer active den, and then sort of a dormant den, if you will, or one that's more in storage. I have a couple of my mugs here. You can see the copper bowl that you actually commented on, Brian, and the timeless bowl back there. If I could show you real quick, like here's the smaller Phoenix travel size scuttle, and the larger Phoenix big scuttle, larger scuttle, and the Moonscape scuttle. It's made out of porcelain. There are a few things underneath my cabinet, a few more things of witch hazel, and I think my Parasso white and Parasso red are down there. But for the most part, this is my den. So back here in my home office, to continue the den tour, so I keep my brushes and razors in here, except the one I'm actively using in the den at the time. This is not a shaving brush, by the way. This is a neck duster from a barbershop. So at last count, I have 14 brushes, and I've decided to stick it at 14, meaning that if I want another brush, I have to replace one of these in my lineup. But honestly, I could go on the road with, say, this brush, this RazoRock 400 long handle synthetic, and be fine. This is my favorite brush, I would say, by far. My Wild West Brushworks handle with the Maggard's knot. I really like that brush, how soft it is. This Omega S brush is synthetic, and it's a beater. It does a great job of building a lather. It's like $10. I would be happy with that on the road. But if somebody said, take two, I would probably take the 400 synthetic and this one on the road. Okay, back here would be my, these are my brushes. Sorry about the shadows here. I'm sorry, my razors. And they're actually in a test tube holder. I use these I had one of these that I used for my fountain pens. They also make good holders for razors, and they're relatively cheap. I'll put a link to one on Amazon. But you can see there I have my razors lined up there. I would probably take the copper Phoenix Artisan Accoutrement Ascension Twist double open comb razor as my one razor. Just while I'm here at the shelf, here's my fragrances, men's colognes lined up here on the top shelf that I keep. I tend to have all my spring, summer ones over here in the corner, and all of my fall, winter ones sort of laid out here where I can just pull them straight off the shelf. They're not stacked deep like these. So, okay, just to wrap up this video, I would say I would always want to pre-shave. I would probably take the Parasso Sandalwood, but the Parasso White would probably be much more neutral, or say 3P or Prep, or one of those pre-shaves, or another pre-shave that you like. I would have to take something I really enjoyed the smell of, like King of Oud. This is actually year-round for me. You may think of oud as being dark and resinous, but this actually reminds me of the barbershop of my childhood, so I would keep that around. I would want at least a splash, so I'd probably use fine American blend, and a balm of some sort. I would probably take Mirsol's emulsion. As far as bowls, I'm sort of torn. I would probably keep these two with me if I had small space. I would use the Timeless Razor bowl. It's a good one. It's deep to build a lather in, but I really like building hot lathers. I much prefer my porcelain Moonscape scuttle to this smaller travel scuttle. I actually put this little piece of pipe insulation here to keep from the handle being too hot when using it, because the water goes into the handle, and this is just plastic. So this is you can't drop and break this. It's because it's plastic. The one Phoenix sells now is actually blue instead of this white color. So this would be a good way to have a hot lather shave that's portable, that's not breakable. but it's not as large as the porcelain one, but it's much less fragile. So having these two things would give you the option of just having a hot lather. At the same time, give you the option of just doing a quick bowl lather if you wanted to. Or something to press out a sample. So if you're using samples, you could press them in here and then lather out of this bowl. Same thing here. You can see there's actually still some sample pressed into this bowl as well. So I hope that helps some of you in terms of your storage, den storage, knowing how to control your shaved den, having specific plans. I really appreciate your question, Brian. I think it's one that every wet shaver needs to ask themselves at some point. And obviously your particular space limitations because of being a full-time RVer, sort of forces you into thinking about that much earlier than, say, a lot of other people would. By the way, I'm extremely jealous. As you're probably aware, there's lots of YouTubers out there that are full-time RVers, and that's what their channels are all about. And I wish that was something I'd known a lot more about much earlier in my working career, shall we say, made some decisions a little differently, because it sounds like an amazing way to live. But anyway, thanks for the question. I hope you found this helpful, and I will see you in the next video.